I first noticed the invitation card on a Monday evening when I was sorting the mail on my kitchen counter. I do not usually get fancy envelopes. Most days it is utility bills, coupons, and flyers for lawn care I never order. This envelope was different. It was thick and creamy with a soft sheen, and my name was written on it in a steady hand using dark blue ink. There was no stamp and no return address. Someone had slipped it through my door slot. I turned it over. A wax seal pressed into the flap showed a little sprig of rosemary, the kind you see tied to dinner napkins in glossy magazines. It felt strange to break a beautiful seal in a dim rental kitchen. I did it anyway and slid out a single card. You are warmly invited to supper at 8 Willow Lane on Friday at 7 p.m. Come hungry, come alone. There was no signature, no RSVP number, only a faint scent of smoke and rosemary clinging to the card. I checked the calendar on my phone. Friday was 3 days away. I stood there for a while with the refrigerator humming beside me. I had lived in this small town for only 4 months, long enough to know the 3 coffee shops and 2 grocery stores and the shortcut to the river path. I had not made real friends yet. I did not know anyone who would invite me for supper with such confidence. I should have thrown the card out, but the truth is that I was curious. Moving to a new place had made my days into tidy loops. I wanted something that did not already fit in that loop. The invitation sat on the counter for 3 days like a small dare. Every time I walked past, the words "come alone" seemed to lift themselves up and look at me. On Friday, I worked from home and finished early. At 6, I stood in my hallway and stared at the mirror. I told myself I would only walk past the address and look at the house. I could decide at the last minute to keep walking. I put on a clean shirt and a dark jacket and slipped the card into my pocket. It felt oddly formal to bring an invitation to a stranger's door. Dusk had fallen by the time I reached Willow Lane. The street was older than my neighborhood, with tall oak trees that met above the road like the frame of a chapel. The leaves whispered in the wind as if the trees were trading secrets. Numbers were painted in neat black on white posts at the edge of each yard. When I passed number 6, I slowed. Number 8 sat back from the road behind a low iron fence. It was a small Victorian house with a wide porch and 2 front windows. A gas lamp stood near the gate, throwing a steady yellow light that did not flicker like electricity. The curtains in the front windows were drawn. The porch boards were newly painted. The whole place looked cared for, but I had never seen anyone going in or out. I stood at the gate for a long moment and listened. Somewhere far off, a train horn blew. The wind smelled like wood smoke. My phone said 6:58. I touched the invitation in my pocket. The card felt warm against my fingers, as if it had been sitting in sunlight. I pushed open the gate, walked up the short path, and climbed the 3 porch steps. The front door was old and heavy. I knocked twice. The sound traveled through the wood and into the house like a deep drum. No one answered. I tried the knob. It turned. The entry hall smelled like rosemary and something buttery, like fresh bread. The floorboards had a faint shine, and the walls were hung with paintings of fields and orchards in late summer. I said hello once, then again. A woman's voice answered from deeper in the house. "Come in, you are right on time." The voice was warm and steady. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. Soft music played from somewhere. A small table in the hall held a clay bowl filled with apples. They were warm, as if they had been sitting by a stove. I took a step toward the music, and the scent of butter grew stronger. The dining room lay through a wide arch. The table was set for 2. White plates and heavy silverware and linen napkins, a real centerpiece made of rosemary sprigs and little white flowers I did not know. Candles burned in glass cups with straight, steady flames. On the sideboard sat covered dishes that released thin trails of steam, and the music turned out to be a record humming under the sound of a needle. A woman stood beside the table with one hand on the back of a chair. She wore a dark dress and her hair was pinned up. She was not young but not old either. Her face was calm in the candlelight, and her eyes looked like a color that would change with the light. "You came," she said. "Thank you for honoring my invitation." "You must be," I began, but she shook her head with a small smile. "Names are for later," she said. "Wash your hands first. The bathroom is through the kitchen." I hesitated, then nodded. The kitchen lay at the back of the house. I found the sink under a row of small windows. Steam fogged the glass. A pot simmered on the stove with a lid clicking softly. On the counter lay a wooden cutting board and a knife and a scattering of rosemary leaves. A pie rested on a rack. The crust was golden and breathed a sweet, warm smell that made my mouth water. I washed my hands and stared at my face in the little mirror by the window. I do not know why I looked for something in my reflection. Maybe I wanted to confirm that I was still only myself, that I had not crossed some line simply by opening a door. When I returned to the dining room, she had already lifted the lids from the dishes. Steam rose with the smell of roasted chicken and buttered carrots and fresh bread. She gestured to the chair across from her, and we sat. "I realize this is unusual," she said, unfolding her napkin, "but I hope you will forgive the formality. I like dinner to be honored." "It is unusual," I said, "but it is very kind. I am new in town. An invitation feels like a gift." "Then we are giving each other gifts," she said and smiled. We ate. The food was simple and perfect. The chicken skin was crisp. The bread was warm and soft inside. The rosemary brushed everything with a clean, careful taste. I felt hunger leave my body in a calm, steady way, replaced by a warmth that started in my chest and spread to my hands and feet. She asked me about work, and I told her I wrote reports that other people read and made decisions from. It sounded dull when I said it out loud, but she listened with the kind of attention that makes ordinary things feel like stories. She asked how I liked the town, and I told her about the river path and the woman at the market who sells eggs with blue shells, and the way the oaks at dusk made the street feel like a hallway in an old church. She nodded. "The oaks remember," she said. "They have stood through many winters. They know what passes and what stays." I asked if she had lived at 8 Willow Lane for a long time. "A very long time," she said, and cut another slice of bread. Her hands moved with a calm grace that made me think of teachers and nurses and musicians. I asked what she did for work. She looked at her hands for a moment, as if she were trying to read a faint script on her skin. "I set tables," she said at last. "I open doors. I keep a light burning for the hungry." It sounded like poetry. I could not tell if she was playing with words or telling me something true in a way I did not yet understand. I asked her who else she invited and how often. She lifted her glass and took a small sip of water. "I invite the people who are almost invisible to themselves," she said. "I invite those who drift at the edges of their own lives. Everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves one good supper." Something in my chest tightened. I thought of the quiet loops of my days and the way nights in a new town stretch out with no one to call. I looked down at my plate and felt shy. We ate until the plates were empty. She stood and cleared dishes with swift, practiced motions. I rose to help. She allowed it with a pleased nod. In the kitchen, she showed me where to stack plates and how to rinse the pans. The movements fell into a rhythm, and in that rhythm, I felt the shape of other nights, other suppers, the pattern of regular kindness moving through an ordinary house. When the dishes were done, she sliced the pie. It was lemon and rosemary and sugar and something that tasted like afternoon sunlight. We ate at the kitchen table with our forks clinking quietly against the plates. The record had finished, and the needle clicked at the end of the groove in a slow, patient way. The gas lamp outside cast its steady yellow on the curtains. "This is the part where I usually tell the truth," she said, setting her fork down. "And the truth is that I invited you for more than company." All night I had felt a soft pressure under the scene, like a current under calm water. Her words pulled me into that current. "What do you need?" I asked. She folded her hands. "There is a small task. It is not dangerous, only delicate. It concerns a promise I made. The promise is older than you might think. I need someone living to help keep it. I tried to smile, though my hands had gone cool. What promise? I asked. A place like this remembers, she said. The oaks remember, the floors remember every footstep. A house is a kind of body for a life made of rooms and light and dinners and goodbyes. When a body like that is abandoned, something hollows out that should not be empty. I keep this place from becoming hollow. I make a supper each Friday at 7 for someone who needs to be seen. It is a gift. It is also a seal. I looked toward the dining room and the candles still burning with steady flames. A seal, I repeated. Yes, she said, a promise to keep what is delicate from tearing, but a promise wears thin if kept by only one pair of hands. I need another to hold it for a moment. I do not understand, I said, though a part of me did. There was a hum along my arms, like the air before a storm. She stood and opened the back door. Cool night air moved into the kitchen. The sound of leaves drifted in like soft speech. She lifted a small tin from a shelf and removed a sprig of rosemary tied with white thread. She placed it in my hand. The leaves were cool and gave off a clean, sharp smell. Take this to the front gate, she said. Tie it to the latch, then come back. I stepped onto the porch. The night felt closer than before. The gas lamp hummed. The street was empty. I walked down the path and stood at the gate with the thin sprig in my hand. I looped the thread and tied a knot. The rosemary looked like a green whisper on the dark iron. As I turned back to the house, the air changed. Sound thinned in a small way, as if the night had drawn in a breath and held it. A dark shape stood at the edge of the yard where the light failed. It was not a person or an animal. It was a darker part of the dark, a smudge given weight. I froze. The shape did not move. It seemed to lean against the air like a tired thing. The rosemary on the latch gave a tiny nod in the breeze. The shape eased back and became only night again. I walked quickly up the path and shut the door. She waited by the stove with her hands folded. I must have looked different because she nodded once. Thank you, she said. That is all. What was that? I asked. A pressure, she said. Hunger without a body. Houses empty out and the emptiness collects. It does not think, but it reaches. The seal keeps it near the gate and out of the rooms. A living hand can tie the knot tighter than mine. It will hold through winter now. She spoke as if she were explaining a simple household task. Yet I felt something shift inside me, as if a door I had not known about had opened into a narrow hallway and someone had set a candle in it. Are you? I began, and then stopped. The question felt too heavy. She watched me and waited for me to try again. Are you living? I asked. The words felt stark in the quiet kitchen. She looked past me toward the front hall and the little table with the apple bowl. Her face changed very slightly, not with sadness, but with recognition. No, she said, not in the way you mean. I keep the house. I keep the promise. It is easier to do that when I am not pulled by the needs of a single life. I was pulled once. The house was more important. A picture rose in my mind, uninvited and clear. A woman at this stove in another time, a storm hammering the roof, people sitting at this table with their heads in their hands, a quiet voice saying, "Eat, then we will think." It felt like a memory that belonged to the house rather than to me. How long have you been here? I asked. Long enough to know the seasons by the way the floorboards creak, she said. Long enough to learn the names that oaks have for each kind of wind. I thought of the invitation card that had appeared without a stamp. I thought of the way the gas lamp did not flicker and the candles burned without moving. The pie's lemon scent had deepened as it cooled. The rosemary sprig on the latch would stain my fingers if I touched it again. I felt calm and a little sad and very awake. Why did you choose me? I asked. Because you were ready to see what you already sensed. she said. "You walk past the oaks and feel the hallway of it. You hear the train at night and hear not only the horn, but the space it opens between towns. You have dinners in your own kitchen with the light over the sink and feel as if someone is missing from the chair across from you. The world is full, and most days our days are too thin to hold it. You were hungry." I nodded. It was a strange relief to be told what I was. I wanted to ask more, but the night had deepened and the candles in the dining room had burned low. She led me to the front hall and handed me my jacket. The apple bowl gleamed. I could see my face in the shine. "Do I tell anyone about this?" I asked, half hoping she would say yes. "You will try," she said, and smiled. "Most will think it is a story. That is fine. Stories feed people too. Remember to salt them well. And on Friday nights, if you have nothing else to do, set an extra plate. Leave the chair across from you pulled back from the table just a little. You will not be alone." I wanted to thank her again, but the words felt small. I opened the door. The gas lamp lit the gate. The rosemary on the latch looked like a small hand raised in blessing. I stepped onto the porch. Cool air sharpened my eyes. When I turned back to wave, the doorway showed only a dark hall and the hint of paintings on the wall. The warm smell of lemon and rosemary faded like a lullaby that has done its work. On the walk home, I felt that the street had widened. The oak trees still leaned together, but it was like walking in a corridor of attention. The wind lifted and carried the scent of smoke from another yard. Somewhere, a dog barked twice and settled. By the time I reached my building, the shape of the night had loosened around me. In my kitchen, I placed the empty invitation card on the counter and pressed my palm against it. The paper held a faint warmth. I filled a glass with water and set it across from me on the table. I made a simple supper out of things I had in the fridge. I set an extra plate. I pulled the opposite chair a little away from the table. The chair made a soft sound as it moved. I sat and ate in steady bites. The second glass of water caught the light from the lamp and threw it onto the wall in a pale oval. At some point during the meal, the second glass grew lower by a swallow or two. I did not look directly at it. I did not have to. All week I felt different. Work was the same. The town was the same. But my attention had changed shape. The egg lady at the market wrapped a half dozen in paper and said, "Blue shells have thicker whites." And I heard her voice with the same clarity I had heard the woman at 8 Willow Lane. The river path looked like a moving ribbon cut into earth by insistence and time. Even the train horn at night sounded less lonely and more like a line drawn to connect dots across a dark map. On Friday, I bought a small bundle of rosemary from the market and tied it with white thread. At home, I cooked a simple stew and set 2 plates on my little table. I washed a glass and placed it across from me. I opened the window just a little so the night air could move in and out like a careful breath. I placed the rosemary on my door latch and tied a tight knot. At 7, I sat down to eat. The chair across from me stood open, not empty. Steam rose from the stew and joined the fading light from the window. I took a bite and felt warmth move through me. I lifted my glass. The other glass grew lower by a swallow or two. It was enough. Sometimes I think about the woman in the dark dress, and I try to picture her as living, wearing a coat and going to the market with a list, talking with a neighbor on the porch about the weather. I cannot quite make the picture settle. She belongs to the house the way a flame belongs to a candle. She is a shape of care, and she keeps a promise I can only hold for a minute at the gate. I still do not know why the invitation came to me. Maybe it comes to anyone who keeps walking after the sidewalk ends and wonders what would happen if they turned left instead of right. Maybe it comes when the need is greatest. I only know that the card sits now in my top drawer with my spare keys and a coil of white thread. Every Friday, I set an extra plate. Every Friday, I tie rosemary to the latch and feel the knot go tight under my fingers. Sometimes, if I look with the side of my eye, I see the shape that is less dark than the dark outside my window, and it pauses at the edge of the light as if remembering a name. It does not come in. It does not need to. The seal holds. Last night I walked past 8 Willow Lane and paused at the gate. The gas lamp glowed its steady yellow, and the oaks murmured their high, old language. No light showed through the curtains. The iron latch looked plain in the lamp glow, and for a moment I could not tell if a sprig of rosemary hung there. Then the wind lifted, and I saw the green shake just once, like a hand raised to a passing friend. I touched the invitation card in my pocket, then kept walking, warmed by the quiet idea that somewhere in a small house on a street with tall trees, 2 plates were set and 2 glasses were catching the same light, and supper was being honored.